Today on At Your Service, we will be addressing school attendance, the role of the parent, and creating student success. Stay tuned.
Today we have two special guests with us who have unique roles working with parents of Anne Arundel County students. First, we have Assistant State's Attorney, Mr. Aaron Myers, and secondly, Pupil Personnel Worker, Ms. Laurie Jones. Welcome. If you would please, could you both tell us a little bit about your roles for Anne Arundel County and our students here?
Sure. As a pupil personnel worker, or PPW, it's really our role to be that link between the home, school, and community. So we are a referral service. We provide resources to parents and families. We also provide information to families about things on various topics, but some of those include attendance, residency issues, custody issues, and then we also deal with some difficult enrollments like kinship and hardship, our homeless population, and our unaccompanied youth children.
Oh, okay. How about you?
So I'm an assistant state's attorney, which means I'm a prosecutor, just like you see on television. And what that means is that we prosecute the crimes, both state and county laws. And unfortunately, when charges are filed for attendance laws, it's my office that prosecutes the parents.
So let's go with what are attendance laws. So in the state of Maryland, we have a compulsory attendance law. What are the legal responsibilities for families and parents that have children in school?
That's correct. These are state laws, and these laws are found in the education article. There are basically two laws. The first one is what I call the active law. And what this is a law that prohibits parents from inducing, attempting to induce, harboring, or employing a child to be absent from school. Now, I know those are a lot of legal terms,
right,
but basically, it is a parent taking an active role. That's why I say it's the active component of the law. They're essentially not acting really as a parent, they're acting as a friend to their child. They're proactively preventing the child from going to school. And because it's an active component, the parent's actually doing something, not functioning as a parent at all, the penalties are very harsh. If there is a violation of this law, the parent is subject to a fine of $500 or 30 days in jail, and that's per occurrence. Now, the second component of the education law is somewhat more of the passive role as opposed to the active role. The passive role is when just a parent fails to see that their child is attending school. Now, this is more like what if a parent is being negligent and is just not ensuring that their child is actually attending. And because it's more of a passive role, the penalty is not as great. It's only a $50 fine, but a possibility of 10 days in jail, again, per occurrence.
So can I ask a clarifying question? So the passive role piece, it's if a letter comes home and says your child has not been in attendance for the last 5 days and they don't call the school or check upon that, would you consider that to be just passive? They receive notification, but then just do nothing. Might have a conversation with their child, you know, little Susan, you need to go to school, but doesn't really turn it around, expects the child to just attend school, but there's no follow-up? Is that more of the passive?
It could be.
Okay.
It very well could be. The passive role is more just ensuring that they're, you made a very good example. If the letter is coming home or these issues are being addressed by the PPWs and the parent is doing nothing and there is no success, and after multiple attendance violations, yes, that could be a prosecution for that component. And I will tell you that since the time that we've been prosecuting these cases, most of the cases that we are prosecuting are those passive type violations, not the active. That's very, very rare and far in between.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was one of the examples that you gave with a letter that went home. So that was an example of something that the school would have done. What are some other things that the PPW's role in that and the school's role in attendance? What happens?
So at the school level, there are several things that should happen before we would even get to the state's attorney's office.
Okay.
So there should be attendance committees at every school,
Okay.
and they'll have meetings usually monthly, and so they'll do an attendance report, And based on the numbers, several things could happen. A teacher should be making phone calls. You may receive a phone call from a school counselor. You may receive phone calls from a administrator. But you'll also be receiving letters. So there are teacher letters, there are school counselor letters, there's an administration letter. If there might be a medical component, the nurse may call or send a letter home to say, hey, what's going on? We just want to make sure everything's okay. What can we do to help? If the letters and phone calls aren't working, then at some point there should either be a parent conference or some type of communication with the parent just to make sure that you are aware of what's going on. At that point, if these steps aren't working, then the PPW receives a referral. Once the PPW receives a referral, then they'll send their own letter saying, hey, this has come to my attention. Now I'm going to be monitoring your child's attendance and working with your family to see what we can do to help. And we'll start off with a letter, a phone call. It may even encompass a home visit, just to make sure that you're aware. Whenever the PPW gets involved, they also explain the law to the parent because you may not be aware of what it is. So we explain the law to them and let them know that this is why it's important and we just really want your child here in school. Based on that conversation, then there's some resources that you might offer to the family to help them out. If none of that works to improve attendance, then charges may be filed. But there are some, school level things. A school counselor might have a group that we might, invite the child to join to work on their attendance or to work on tardiness so that they're available for learning. And as a school system, we've also tried to put in place some things like we have the Responsible Actions Attendance Program we might tell parents about. And so we've done that for about 2 years now. This is our second year going into it, actually. And so it's really a 6-week program in the evenings that we have in various schools around the county. And it's more of a parenting workshop with your child. And so you both come in the evening, and Aaron comes to the first session. And he explains the law and the process to the family. And then we work on things like goal setting, communication, and discipline practices. So trying to work on maybe just changing the behavior to help with that. So those are just some school level things that we try to put in place before we get to court.
So before we move on, because I do want to talk a little bit about custody issues and surrounding attendance issues, is there a particular grade level for the RAP program that you're focusing on, or is it elementary, middle, and high school?
Elementary, middle, and high school.
Okay.
So we encourage everyone to come, but it's mostly those who have had more than 15 absences. So if it's more than 15, then we try to get you in there. We've had some families participate that have been court mandated. So these are families that have already been to court, and the judge has said, well, we want you to take this class and make sure that you're there. But we invite all of our families to come because it's really, I think the most help that people get out of it, and we hear this from the kids and from the parents, is that they love that one-on-one time with their parent to be able to talk about what is going on with them. And so when you have it for 6 weeks and you're there every week and you have a designated time and you have a designated place that you know that you're going to be, it really helps.
That's awesome. So do custody issues ever have a bearing on attendance? And if so, how do you handle those? I don't know if, Laura, you want to speak first, but just because we see things at the school level with families and surrounding attendance, and sometimes it can be the effect of something going on.
That's true. Or sometimes like the Mondays might be a theme, and that the one parent will say, oh, well, the child was with their father every weekend, and that's why they're out every Monday, and they'll blame the parents. Those type of situations might come up. So is custody ever an issue? Is that ever a bearing?
It comes up. It absolutely comes up. And so, first I would definitely recommend that they contact their attorney and see what they should do regarding whatever the custody agreement is. But the responsibility really falls on both parents. So if there's a continued attendance issue, both parents are responsible for that, and they both have the possibility of being charged. Because at the school level, I can't tell, or I don't know when the child is with which parent.
Right.
You know, so it would really fall on both parents.
I would agree with that because I've seen cases where both parents are charged and they're sometimes pointing fingers at each other and they're trying to argue the legal differences between physical custody and legal custody. And when
Right.
Laurie says that they should get with their lawyer, I want to make it very clear that their lawyer is not the state's attorney.
Right, right.
I'm very clear to people when I say I'm a state's attorney, I'm not your attorney, so I
Correct.
cannot give you any kind of recommendations or advice. So if there is some sort of separation in effect and there are custody issues, they need to consult with their private attorneys as to what their responsibilities are.
But you have seen that play out in the court system.
Absolutely. I've had both parents standing up at the table as defendants.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Interesting.
We have like 3 more minutes till we go to break. So now that the compulsory attendance law is now 18 starting in July.
Well, under 18.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Under 18.
Yes,
From-
under 18 I mean.
From the ages of 5 to under 18, and it was just interesting because when Laurie was talking about the RAP program, I do attend these, and I've seen the range of ages everywhere from the youngest child to the teenager sitting next to their parents at these programs.
Yeah, so what do you think the parents can do now? I mean, because it's now going to be even more challenging for these headstrong teenagers. So what do you think the impact's going to be and for these parents, and what can they do?
Well, I would hope that they follow the law and that charges aren't filed. I know that before charges are filed, my office always ensures, they always, to the extent we can, recommend that parents contact, stay in touch with, communicate as much as possible with Laurie and the rest of the PPWs.
Yeah, just be more involved in their lives probably and work more with the support of the schools,
Right.
student services, their counselors, the PPWs.
Right. I think that's probably the most
Biggest.
important thing. The key thing is the communication piece.
Right.
To always be in communication with the school, with administrators, with your school counselors, with your PPWs to let us know what is happening. Because the more we know, then the more we can help. If we don't, we can partner together if we know what's going on to help this child be more successful. And that's from the little on up to the our oldest students. So just that communication piece has to be there. But also, some of the issues that I see with the teenagers is the follow through with consequences.
Okay.
And so if I'm telling my teenage child, hey, you have to be in school, you have to do this, and then they say, well, I can't take away their cell phone, or I can't take away their car, or I can't, no, you have to go to school. It's school first, and then everything
Right.
falls into place after that. And so it really starts when they're younger, but then when they get up to these ages and they're getting a little bigger and they're taller and they want more freedom and responsibility, just making sure that we're sticking with that discipline piece with these older kids, then we can make sure that they're attending school regularly.
Exactly.
So would you suggest starting earlier? Because sometimes you will find, it might manifest in high school, but typically what I'm seeing, and I'm not sure if you're seeing this across the county or at the state level, it starts pretty early. There seems to be a pattern within families sometimes that it's in elementary and then it rises to middle school and then it's really out of control at the high school level. So if we could nip that in the bud and maybe work with families and students earlier, because sometimes I feel that there's a reason. A 5-year-old typically, normally, doesn't just not go to school because they're still a young enough child that they really have to rely on their caregivers to make sure that they get up in the morning or get on the bus. But really maybe reaching out to the families, like what is going on? What is impeding that process? Or maybe the family has 3 jobs, and so what are the expectations? Are you finding that it's a little bit more complex at the younger levels, that really working with the parents and trying to provide some community resources might be helpful?
That's what's nice about having the PPW going in and doing those home visits and really finding out what's going on in that home. Right?
Absolutely.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
The new kindergarten, first, and second grade curriculums are designed to engage students in a variety of learning opportunities that involve collaboration, conversation, and creativity. One learning block that is devoted to movement and healthy minds and bodies supports a cooperative classroom and a feeling of connectedness. In Move, 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 Healthy Minds and Bodies, activities support oral language development and prepare the brain for new information. The use of repetition and movement offers an opportunity to review content across various learning blocks. The positive effects of physical activity on the young brain provides a focus and a readiness to learn.
Ready?
Ask your child how Move, Move, Move helped them learn today.
Run! Excellent, boys and girls.
Thank you for joining us at Your Service. We were having a discussion about attendance in schools and the legal ramifications of not attending school. So I think the biggest thing for our viewers, I want to go back to before break. The biggest thing I want parents and students to understand is the whole prevention model in working with students and families and attendance. And what would you wish for as a state's attorney and a PPW when working with students and families?
Well, for me, it's all about establishing a pattern of behavior. And so we know, as kids are younger, they form these patterns of school attendance and how to live in a society. And so if we start them young, knowing that this is your responsibility, this is what you do, and they're coming regularly to school, then it wouldn't creep up to be a problem as they get older. You wouldn't see that defiance piece so much as they get older and them not wanting to come to school. Plus that parenting piece, starts when they're young. You can't say, oh, now that you're 17, I'm going to start telling you what to do. It doesn't always work out that way, So if you start when they're young, making sure that they know how to respect the rules, that they're doing what they need to do, that they're coming to school, and you're enforcing those rules when they're younger, the likelihood that they're going to get to high school and just decide, I'm not coming to school, is far less likely to happen.
And from a prosecutor's perspective, our hope is that all of that happens, that all of those childhood, lessons are learned, and that the communications are kept open with the PPWs from the beginning, so that prosecutions, cases, they never even happen in the first place.
Exactly.
So, the big wish is when, as a parent, you're starting to see little things at younger ages. What do you recommend for them to do? What would be the bottom line? With students not wanting to come to school or saying that they feel sick in elementary school, what would you recommend for a parent to do right away?
Contact your school. Contact your school counselor. Yep. If they're saying they have stomach aches all the time, make sure you're contacting your school nurse, and you're making sure that they know these are not excuses that we're going to take because this is important. And because this is important, I'm going to make sure that I get all of my, my resources in order. I'm going to get all of my partners in order so that they can help me make sure that my child knows that they have a support system at home and they have a support system at school. And if it's an issue at school, then we're going to make sure we deal with it there. Right. We're going to make sure we're involving our school counselor, we're talking to our school nurse, we're talking to our administrators, our teachers are involved, and they're communicating with the child about what's going on so that they don't feel like they can have that excuse. Exactly. Or they can't say, oh, I don't want to go to school, or this is happening. And then, again, it's just with that little discipline piece, it's that follow through. This is what's going to happen. If they need to create charts, our teachers and our school counselors are wizards when it comes to reward systems and charts and making sure our kids are doing what they need to do in school, and you can model that same behavior at home to make sure that they're doing them. Did you make your bed? Did you brush your teeth? We're going to have a little chart for that. Did you go to school today? You get a sticker for that. So making sure that we do those basic things when they're young, just so they know that this is important, and because it's so important, this is how we're going to treat that. We're not going to allow you to dictate that you're not going to come to school.
Exactly. Those patterns are hard to break and get into those routines. Because once you start the court system, we try to avoid it, but once it happens, that's not good. Now, the consequence is more serious when a parent has a record, so to speak. So if we do have to go down that road, is it more serious for a parent or even the child if the child has a record or is on probation or something? Do you have any stories or anything like that that's happened?
Well, the story that I always think of is concerning parents taking this very seriously? And I think they do take it seriously. I want to say approximately a year ago, I got a phone call from a young mother who had gotten one of the letters that Lori previously mentioned. And the letter was basically saying to her, you know, this is the consequences if you don't send your child to school. And so this young mother called me and started to tell me on the phone that she had a daughter who had just started high school, and she started to see this behavior where the daughter was missing school. And she was reaching out to me, asking me for help. What could she be done? And I think to say that she was concerned, I think, is an understatement. I think she was frightened. This letter had frightened her because of the consequences, the legal consequences. And then she started to tell me that her older daughter, who I think was a senior in the high school, she was trying to ask her older daughter to help, but the younger daughter was, I think somebody said, a wild child, and was starting to miss a lot of school. And as the conversation continued, I soon learned that this mother, she was legally blind and a quadriplegic in bed. And that's why she felt like her hands were tied, and she didn't know what to do. And even though her older daughter couldn't help. And at that point, I advised her that she should definitely communicate with the PPW and the school to notify them of this. I'm not sure if all of those resources and all those efforts that Lori previously mentioned had already been expended. I would like to think that it was, but I don't think so. I think this mother, the letter was the wake-up call, and she was finally reaching out. And maybe that's what really it took, was this letter from the PPWs for that to happen.
Right, and that's a really interesting situation, because I think sometimes people wait. Parents might wait or not know that there's a PPW, or that we have connections, that we know agencies that we can connect them to if they need special services or help. Because that is a very difficult situation, because the mom has some major physical disabilities that might impede helping her child. But it was great that you're able to turn her into the direction of the school and the resources that we have in the school. And I'm always kind of like, ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing, is they see us as an educational system, but even then we know where the resources, or if there are the resources in the community for Anne Arundel County. So that's awesome.
And I think that happened here, because after that phone call, I never heard of a case being filed against that mother. So it must have been a success.
Right.
That's great. So can we talk about some of the resources? I know that we had mentioned the WRAP program earlier, but what are some of the resources there are for families and communities?
So if I think about the story that Erin just told, if I were the PPW hypothetically in that case, then the first thing I would have done was probably linked our family with Cricket, which is through the systems of care, and had them, because with Cricket, it's a round table of resources. And it sounds like from that story, mom needs some help. There needs to be some help in the home. There needs to be some parenting skills there. And so if mom is unable to parent and she's the only one in the house, then you have to pull into some other outside resources to kind of come into the home and help them out with that. So that would have been a good start for them, because there are Department of Social Services is there, Jiffy's there from the Center of Chesapeake Center of Youth, and at that table they can say, okay, well, here's what we can do to help this family. Here's what I can do to help this family, and then set them up with resources that way. Because what the goal is just for the child to come to school.
Exactly.
It's not to go to court.
Right.
So if we can get you some resources to help with that home piece, so that the child is now coming to school, we're satisfied with that. We want you to be successful at home. We want you to be successful at school. And so there are resources out there that can help families that are struggling, in the home, but may not want to, let the school know what exactly is going on. And we don't need to know every little detail about what's going on if you don't want us to know that.
Right.
But we can set you up with some people who can help you work on that piece. And so some agencies that I use that go into the home or and help with those types of things is Thrive, is one, Empowering Minds, Jiffy, which is also through the Chesapeake Center of Youth and Development, Systems of Care. Again, you can call them, and they have a plethora of resources they can link you with. family preservation, which is through the Department of Social Services. They can come out into the home and really help with some things. They can also even set you up for parenting classes through Anne Arundel Community College. They can help you with summer programs if you're looking for something like that. And so some of these resources are not just about helping with school. They're also about helping you be more sustainable as a family and getting the family resources. So if there's a financial need, they may help with that. If there if there's a housing issue, will try to help you and set up things like that. So, all of those things can impact, what happens when a child is not in school. And so we want to make sure that this child is whole by making sure this family is whole. And so if we can link you up to resources that can help you with that, that's what our job is.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I think just parents don't have that background knowledge to know. So I think this episode is a great way for them to know where to reach out and to ask some questions and to contact the school. And we try to avoid court at all cases, but what should parents expect if their child is going down that road? Is there an expectation or with that whole process?
So if after using all those efforts, the PPWs are still unsuccessful and they file charges, here's what the parents can expect. First of all, they have to enter the court system. And you enter the court system one of two ways. Is either a summons, in other words, a letter is probably going to be delivered to them, to their home by a sheriff's deputy. And I would always like to say this is like the respectful way to begin a case, where if they receive the letter, they're supposed to go then to a district court commissioner. If they go to a district court commissioner, they're advised of their rights. However, if for some reason they're neglectful in receiving that summons, just like they're neglectful in ensuring that their children attend school, then there's a possibility an arrest warrant might issue. And if an arrest warrant issues, the parent is taken into custody and then is taken to a commissioner, and then there's a possibility of making bail, not making bail. The court system is a long one, and there's a possibility that they need to retain a defense attorney. And I always tell parents at these RAP sessions that if they have to retain a defense attorney or come to court, that is missing work. And missing work, as well as retaining attorneys, that's money. So this is money that's coming out of the family because of these legal prosecution. And then once they are entered the system by that way, they then have to start coming to court for the actual cases. And this is when, again, they're missing court. And they're coming to these courtrooms, and these courtrooms are public forums. And so when the prosecutor and the judge and the defense attorney are discussing the cases, I always tell parents, it's in the open. It's in the open, and it can be somewhat embarrassing for the parent as well as the child. And that's why we always say it is the absolute last step. It is the last straw when all of the efforts and resources that Laurie and the rest of the PPWs try to accomplish, when all of that fails.
Right. So the biggest thing is try to avoid all of that.
No one wants parents to avoid that more than the state's attorney's office. Like
Sure.
Laurie said, the goal of this law is not to punish parents, it's to encourage parents to ensure that their children attend school.
And they just start early. Send them to school. If they're not, like, I always tell my kids, if they're not throwing up or don't have a high fever, you're out the door and you're going to school.
Right.
And if you start those habits early,
Definitely.
then they know they need to go to school, whether they have a little bit of a headache, they have a little bit of a stomach ache. Get in the habit of going to school every day, all day.
It's kind of setting the idea of student, your job is school.
Yeah,
Just like mommy and daddy have jobs to do, your job is a student, and you have to be there 9 to 5 or whatever your school hours are. And you have to be there unless you're direly ill.
Right.
But other than that, you do your best, and that just like mommy and daddy or whoever, grandma's taking care of you, to do your best to support yourselves and to learn. It's one of your responsibilities. And
Yeah.
so the biggest thing I want to come back to just briefly is the idea of parents or families or guardians reaching out to the school system and early, if they're starting to notice they're not sure if it could be a medical symptom or
Yes.
whatever is going on in the family. There's a lot of privacy and respect for the family and what's going on in the schoolhouse, and that we have the supports and we have the PPWs
And
to
it's
definitely,
confidential.
and it is confidential. So
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic thing
Talk
that
to your
people need
counselors,
to
talk to
know.
your PPWs, talk to your schools. It's confidential. We're on your side. will work with you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
This
You're
is so much information.
Thank you.
It's so
Thank you for
very
having us.
important. And thank you for joining us today.